Hey, welcome to Impress the Boss. I'm Catherine.
I'm Laurel.
And I'm Valerie.
And we're here to help you stand out without working overtime.
Welcome back to You're the Boss episode. This is the third You're the Boss episode in our series, this segment or this time around. And so if you haven't caught on to the previous episodes, you'll want to check out episode 21 and 25, where you'll get an introduction into the other You're the Boss episodes with our Bobs. We also have the same guest back. We're really excited to have John back on our show as we talk about 3 more Bobs this week. We're looking at Bob-Ullet, which is a play on Bob Mullet. I know it kind of comes off weird, but Bobbie-Two-Shoes, which is my favorite. Well, I don't know if it's my favorite because I am her, but so maybe I kind of want to be another Bob. And then we're talking about Bob-Spock as well. So we're going to dig into how to best manage those types of Bob personalities if you're a boss or a manager, or if you're trying to get influence or trying to influence those people around you when you don't have them as direct reports, which is even more challenging. So Laurel, tell us a little bit more about John for those of our listeners who weren't able to join the previous episodes.
Yeah, for sure. So again, you can go back to 21 or 25 to get a little bit more detail. But as Catherine just said, we're looking at or having John as our guest with us because he spent 20 years in a company that does not have a hierarchy, a traditional hierarchical structure. So he has served with or been with Vertex, a software company, for about 20 years. They have in the last 18 months become a traditional hierarchy company. So John now is serving as a traditional boss with traditional direct reports.
Poor guy.
Yes. So he is the director of product management and strategy with them. So we're grateful to have, that perspective from him of being able to live on both sides of that and what does influence look like as somebody who has that direct report positional power, so to speak, and then more of just that collaborative, influential approach. So in addition to his experience at Vertex, he also, as Catherine mentioned, has his own consulting that he does as well through Strategic Collisions International, where he focuses on helping accidental entrepreneurs to launch their ventures. So all of the components of getting them up and going. He also is a professor at Drexel University in their entrepreneurship program. So we're very grateful to have John's perspective for this episode of You're the Boss. Welcome to Impress the Boss. Thank you so much, John, for joining us again for one of our boss episodes.
Oh, thanks, Laurel. It's great to be here again. Always a pleasure, and really looking forward to talking about these 3 new Bobs.
Yes, thank you. We're excited to have you talk about them and share your thoughts and expertise with us. So we're going to talk about Bob-Ullet, Bobbie-Two-Shoes, and Bob-Spock. So for Bob-Ullet, tell us what it is that you think is the best way to influence a Bob-Ullet.
Oh, absolutely. Well, a Bob-Ullet, I'll tell you, this is a person whose worlds can collide in the worst possible times.
Yes.
So, I think what I would say with them, there's a real risk that all of their hard work and all of the things that they're very polished and professional and really charged at could get overlooked, even, in cases where they drop the ball, even something small. So that reputation of being a partier can sometimes offset the fact that most of the time they're very, very diligent and hardworking.
And focused. Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah. I think the other thing is, since they can have a tendency to not follow through on things or have cases where they do miss things, it's really important for a Bob-Ullet to have a system to make sure that they're following through. So some way to identify, I've made a commitment to deliver something on a certain date, to keep track of that, to keep it in front of themselves, reminders, alerts, something that's going to make sure that they do deliver as they've committed, or at least if they see that they're not going to be able to, they can reset that expectation before they pass the deadline to make sure that it's the daytime Bob-Ullet reputation that stays with them, and the party side doesn't catch up in a bad way.
That's right. Yes, for sure. Good. Love it. Thank you. All right. How about Bobbie-Two-Shoes? What's the best way to influence a Bobbie-Two-Shoes?
Bobbie-Two-Shoes, as a leader of people, it's always hard to criticize the Bobbie-Two-Shoes because they're going to keep you out of trouble, and they're going to do the things and follow the rules, and that can be a really great thing. I think the challenge here and the thing to coach here is sometimes like getting too focused on the rules and following the rules can really alienate others around them. And so I think the thing here is just not to let the rules interfere with the relationship. Not necessarily not say ignore the rules or set them aside, but be very relational. And I think for this person to be able to think about what's the rule there for, like what's really the value behind the rule, and why is that important? Because I think if they can really zero in on that and share their passion for the value and encourage others to follow the rule because they also agree with the value, not because it's just like checking the box or doing what the rule says, I think they can really be influential with others.
Yep.
The other thing I think for a Bobbie-Two-Shoes is they've got to be really authentic. They've got to be following the rules if they're going to kind of be focusing on those for others. So they got to show that they are going to be the example. They may even be the idealized example of what that value is, following those rules. I think that's going to be really important for them as well.
Yeah. Great. So true. Thank you. All right. How about for Bob-Spock? What's the best way to influence a Bob-Spock?
Bob-Spock, the tech science fiction enthusiast. In spite of my extroverted appearance, I do love a good episode of Trek. So
you and Catherine both.
That's right. That's great. I'll tell you, for these folks, it's really hard to be brilliant and introverted. That could be such a tough thing because it's having ideas, and it just all seems very simple. I think the thing for them is, I would coach someone like this. Don't try to be someone you aren't, but help take a complicated idea and make it understandable. I'll just speak to this audience for a minute because they'll know what I'm talking about. It's like, you got to be Geordi LaForge. And for those who aren't familiar with Star Trek, Geordi LaForge is the head of engineering on the Enterprise for the Next Generation. And there's always some really complex problem, and he comes out in a very short and simple, comfortable way, explains to the captain what the problem is, and says, "This is what I think we should do." And then, of course, Jean-Luc Picard's like, "Make it so, Geordi." And so
I love it.
Being able to take that knowledge and that wisdom, that kind of just brilliant perspective, but be able to explain that in simple terms, just like what it is, what the implications are, and here's what I would recommend. I think that really helps to be more accessible, and also to bring a lot of value that this type of personality is going to have.
Perfect. I love it. Thanks for adding some good fun color for us. That's awesome. Catherine is laughing, as are many other Trekkie peoples in this world. So thank you. Yeah. Great. Well, thank you so much, John. We really appreciate all the wisdom and insights about influencing our Bob-Ullet, Bobbie-Two-Shoes, and Bob-Spock. Thank you.
A pleasure as always. Live long and prosper.
Again, I appreciate the insights and deep understanding that Dr. John Wilson brings to us with discussing our Bob characters. And the takeaway that I have for us and our listeners is to just explain that this is the core of what we're about here in Impress the Boss. That just because we do not influence, or maybe if you do not influence from a manager's position or a boss's position, how do you influence where you're at? Mm-hmm. And how do we get along with these characters, these Bob characters and different personalities? And I think that's why we bring in different perspectives of somebody like Dr. John Wilson to bring his insights and takes of how it looks as the boss, per se, his perspective, but at the same time allowing us to learn from his insights of how we can influence even among those around us when we're not the boss or somebody in charge.
I think, Valerie, you mentioned and alluded to this. The core of Impress the Boss is what we realized is there's a lot of material about leadership out in the industry. So I think it's very intimidating for a lot of people. I'm not a leader. I don't have this sense of power or position of power at my organization, or maybe I just manage a small group of 3 people. That's not a lot of power. I mean, but that's, I think, a misconception about leadership. So what we're trying to do here is to really help everyone be a leader where they're at and help cultivate our who we are, our skills, our relationship skills, our professional skills, and be able to expand our influence even if we are not in that designated position of power. And that's really important for all of us to do.
Yeah.
It's important for us as individuals. It's important in our personal relationships. And that's what we're really passionate about. And being able to have John on and talk from a manager's perspective is very important, because if you manage, you want to manage well.
That's
But
right.
it's also how can we influence when we aren't necessarily managers.
That's right.
And I think what we're trying to say is everything that John brings out and points out from a manager's perspective can really be useful in all areas. I mean, in any type of position where we want to bring influence, because leadership is influence. So it's being able to take all of these tips and really take action upon them and influence in ways that's going to bring a positive influence.
So if you're the boss, we want to know how you would most effectively work with these 3 Bobs in your work environment, if you have any tips or tricks. And if you're not the boss and you're trying to expand your influence, and maybe you've got some good wins and some good not so great wins, we'd love to hear about those too. So use the hashtag #ImpressTheBoss. We look forward to learning more about you and your journey. And don't forget to follow John on social. It's John H. Wilson, or his personal email is in the show notes. And we look forward to having you back next time.
Thanks for tuning in. Don't forget to follow us on social for your daily standout tips: LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, and don't forget to use the hashtag #ImpressTheBoss and share your journey with us. And until next time, Bob's out.